Hello, and welcome to the mentorDINO podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Rossier. I am an architect and founder of mentorDINO. Join me each week as I speak with amazing professionals in and around the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, as we are all part of a larger interconnected community. We discuss everything from career stories, lessons learned, and advice for others finding their own unique career path. Thank you to all of our current subscribers, and if you're new, welcome to the conversation. And if you like this episode, please do me a favor by hitting subscribe, like, or share it with a friend. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support them on their own unique career journey. On today's episode of the mentorDINO podcast, I would like to welcome Ryan Sullivan, founder of Off the Beaten Path Financial in Bozeman, Montana. Thank you, Ryan, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Yeah, glad to be here, Caitlin. Looking forward to it.
So I always start out with my loaded question. If you don't mind introducing yourself to my listeners, letting them know a little bit about your experience and journey so far in your education and career.
Yeah, well, so my background is in engineering. And so went to school for mechanical engineering, got a job at a regional architecture and engineering firm, and started there designing HVAC and plumbing systems for buildings. And fairly early on in that, I kind of realized that I wasn't sure that I wanted to do that forever. And kind of the situation was I sat next to my boss, who was the head of the mechanical engineers for that office, which was the headquarters. And then his boss, who was the head of the mechanical engineers for the whole firm, about a 400-person firm or so. And so I kind of quickly saw what my career path could be, right out of college. And I didn't really like what I saw. And so so I started to kind of question, this can't be it. Like, I'm not going to drive to the same place for 40 years and do the same thing. And within, 2 years was already doing not that much different work from guys that have been there for 20, 30 years. And they were obviously better and knew a lot more for sure, but like the work itself wasn't necessarily that much different. And so I quickly started to kind of question what else was out there and what else I could do. And I'd always been fascinated kind of by the stock market and investing and money. And I wanted to understand, like, how could I have my money make me money? And that was something I remember Googling like over and over and over again. And so I went kind of down this rabbit hole of investing, and I thought about trading. And, I'm like 23 at the time. And so I don't have a lot of money, and it's usually not the wisest thing for most people to do. And so I kind of put that on the back burner and was like, okay, I need to make the money first before I can really invest it. And so then I discovered entrepreneurship. And what's funny is my mom in college was like, oh, you should take some business classes. And I was like, business classes? Those are for the stupid kids. Like, I'm an engineer, like we all made fun of the business kids. And so I did not take business classes. And then I kind of discovered this whole world of entrepreneurship and business. And so that really interested me and felt like a way to have more control over my income and more control over my time. And at the end of the day, I was really just looking for the flexibility and kind of the freedom to kind of do what I wanted when I wanted to do it. And so that started this close to 10-year journey of like trying to actually do that. And so I originally looked at starting a business, and I didn't really get very far with that. Then I tried to be a business consultant and didn't really get very far with that. Then I tried to buy a business and didn't get very far with that. Eventually got an opportunity to start an engineering department at a mechanical plumbing contractor. And so I went there, started the engineering department from scratch. It was a great opportunity to basically get to build my own firm. I had very little oversight. I got to pretty much do whatever, but I got a steady paycheck. I didn't have to worry about making payroll, and so I didn't have a lot of the risks that come with going off on your own. That contractor got bought by a larger mechanical plumbing contractor a couple of years in, and same thing, continued to grow the department. We ended up doing about $1.25 million, had a team of about 11 of us at one point. And so, got a lot of experience from that as far as like basically building a business just within another company. And all along, though, I just was spending all my free time on finance and investing and all these different things. And so I eventually ran into this guy at the store who was a financial advisor that used to be an engineer. And so we kind of hit it off. And originally I wanted him to be my advisor. And he told me no and kind of pushed me to keep pursuing what I was doing. And so we met for lunch or drinks, periodically. And eventually kind of all these different things came together. And it was like, you know what? I think I should launch my own business. I should start doing this. Like, I was having conversations with people around me and kind of realized there was a need for it. And so all of that kind of culminated in launching my firm, Off the Beaten Path Financial. So,
yeah. And before I jump to the financial mentor that you kind of like ran into, like when you were trying out different things, it was all down a business route, but then you ended up stepping into managing an engineering department itself, which is what you were trying to get away from. But I see, managing a department, you get access to the financial side, how to run a business. So after all those little things, how did that other opportunity come up to like, okay, that's a good step for me to take?
Yeah, I mean, what I wanted was, I wanted to not just be an engineer. I wanted more, and I wanted to get those types of experiences. And so it provided that. Like, I got access to the financials, like I hired people, I fired people, I did proposals, I did sales, I did marketing, I reviewed things, I did everything. And so it was kind of a unique opportunity to be able to do that, because most situations, there'd be more oversight, there'd be more supervision. And so I really kind of had no leash. And so it allowed me to kind of develop a lot of those skills that I knew were going to be important for whatever I did, whether that was able to spin off on its own and be its own entity, which I thought might happen, or at least get ownership in it in some way. Or if I ended up going a different direction and starting my own business, whatever that might be, like those are all still really important skills. And that's kind of the thing about management or leadership or business, like they're fairly universal. And so, I mean, each business has its own kind of nuances and each industry has its nuances. But at the end of the day, a lot of the skills and the things that you actually need to do are fairly similar.
Yeah. And I'm surprised you stumbled upon another mechanical engineer that shifted into finance that you could get coffee with. That's always the like golden nugget when you find somebody that like does the thing that you're thinking about doing. So what I know he wouldn't be your financial advisor. So what advice did he give you? Do you still talk to that individual on, when you decided to start off the beaten path? How did that relationship go?
Yeah, well, I mean, so originally I didn't want to be an advisor. And so when I kind of learned about his struggle and him starting his firm, and so he quit his job. He had a nice engineering income, quit his job, had a family. And this business, the advisory business, can be really difficult in the first handful of years to start. It can be really slow to kind of get momentum and traction and to really make much income from it. And so long term, it can work out pretty well, but the first few years can be tough. And so he had some stories and kind of shared some of those experiences. And part of the reason too why I didn't want to start my own engineering firm was because I didn't really like the sales and marketing side, business development, and with construction projects, it's a project. There's a duration on it. And so you get a fee and you do some work and then it's over and you need another one. And so you're always just having to like refill that pipeline. And so I didn't really like that. And then coupled with the challenge of just being a really slow business to start, originally it was like, I wasn't interested. But later on, I'm honestly, what changed was I got more and more involved in investing in finance and started talking to more people and recognized that like I had developed an expertise and that most people weren't spending all of their free time learning these things like I was. And so that was news to me. And so I was like, oh, there's something here. And as I kind of learned a little bit more about the business model, and then I kind of saw some different ways to go about it from what he did, I recognized like, hey, I think there's an opportunity here. And again, it took my interests, it took what I enjoyed doing, it took the conversations that I was already having, and and then I liked the way that the business was structured, the opportunities it presented, the flexibility that it could provide. And so all of that was like, okay, now this kind of makes sense. And so I had to see it from a different lens.
Yeah, because you're doing more than, like, when I think of a financial advisor, like my little brother did that for a little while, and it was very more corporate. And once you get somebody like in the system, you'll get the benefits of it, but it takes a long time. But you're doing so much more than that with Off the Beaten Path. So before we dive into all the details on what you're doing, what was it like deciding to take that leap and start off the beaten path? I know regardless if somebody's starting their own architecture or engineering business, taking that leap to own a business can be kind of daunting. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, well, it was definitely daunting for me as well. And I mean, I had known for a long time that like I was going to start a business or be a business owner one way or another. Like I was going to figure out how to make that work. I didn't know what it was going to be or where it was going to be or what it would look like, but I knew that something was going to happen. And so the same year, this was 2022, I actually, I traded options for about 6 months. And so again, just kind of following like my passion for investing and that side of things, got really deep into that. And so I wanted to kind of do that, full time, or I wanted to, make money from that. But that's really tough to do. And it's a really, it can be very stressful just because it's really up and down, and it's hard to just consistently perform and make like a steady income from that. And so I was like, well, what if I manage other people's money, and then you basically you charge a fee for that. And so then it's a little more, steady. And so it all happened pretty quickly. Like, I think that the day that I decided to become an advisor was also the day that I filed for my LLC. And basically immediately after that, I started the process of taking the exams and getting certified and licensed. And then I started registering my business with the state. And so, I mean, from when I like made the decision, it was basically a 4-month turnaround from like, okay, now I'm up and running, I'm registered, I'm licensed, like I have everything in place. So it happened very quickly. And most people would not probably do that or recommend that. And that other advisor, the engineer advisor, he sort of got mad at me actually because of what I did, of like, you don't know what you're doing and you shouldn't have done that. And I was like, I thought we had talked about this. Like, didn't you do this? And so his dad was an advisor, I think. And so there's a little bit different circumstances and whatnot. But so we don't actually talk anymore. But he was definitely a catalyst for me just to kind of learn and see the space. And it kind of opened my eyes to that. So at the end, though, it was just I wouldn't say it was like a off the cuff decision. It was just the culmination of years and years of looking and searching. And I think that the foundation that I had laid from the research I had done, the thoughts I'd had, the thinking, evaluating different opportunities, like all of that laid the groundwork. So when I saw the opportunity and recognized it, I was willing to act and to move on it. And so that's kind of what I would say is that so a lot of times people don't know what they want to do, but they know they want to do something else. And there's a fair bit you can do to kind of prepare for that and to put yourself in a position to be able to move quickly when you find the right thing.
Yeah, because pretty much since we've been talking, you've been thinking about doing a pivot since really you started your career after college. So
right.
Even though that like from, okay, I'm doing this to up and running was pretty quick, that actually is a benefit because you're not wasting a bunch of time or anything. You were able to find something that's like, nope, niche down, figure it out and go. Because also when you're an entrepreneur, it's also good to fail fast and not let it take forever. So all the other little trials you did, it's okay, try it out. If it failed, you didn't linger, you moved on. And a lot of people will linger and get stuck on something at the same time. So I think it's a great move once you figured out, okay, this all makes sense. And you did the research because you've been doing research for years. It's a little bit different of an approach. So I think it all makes sense. And from your LinkedIn, it looked like there was some overlap with still working full time and trying to get off the beaten path, off the ground. So how was that managing your time with everything? Because I know I work full time and do mentorDINO in more of my evenings and weekends. So I'm always curious how other people get their businesses started.
Yeah, so that was definitely the case for me as well. So I was doing both for about 2 years, and it was hard. I mean, I was fortunate. I mean, I'm married, but we don't have kids yet, and I don't have a ton of things going on outside of, because I always was spending my free time on stuff like this, and so I just changed what the focus was, but I had always left room for trying to figure out what my thing was going to be or how to make some extra money or whatever it was. And so, I worked nights and weekends, basically every single night, every single weekend for close to 2 years. And I think that was the right move. Like, I talked to a lot of people about it, and I talked to other advisors, and I went to a conference right after I was starting my firm, that October. And I wasn't even fully registered yet. I remember talking to this guy, and he was like, "What are you doing? Why don't you just go all in, And part of it was I had a plan, and my wife and I really wanted to own some property and buy a house. And so we hadn't done that yet. And I knew that if I went self-employed, it's substantially more difficult to get a loan, and my income would probably be less, or would take a little while to build back up. And so there was kind of this sequence of events that I've been planning around of we got to get this property, and I got to build the business, and then we can have the kids, And so that was part of it too. But that timeline, especially as someone that's changing careers completely into a whole new industry, it gave me an opportunity to kind of figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of iteration and a lot of trial and error and a lot of things that didn't work. And so when I did end up going full time, I could really hit the ground running. And I think that I didn't have the stress. I can't even imagine how stressed I would have been if I had completely just given up my income. And then with how difficult it was to sort of get this off the ground and moving. And so I think that for me, at least, it was kind of the right move of start on the side, build the foundation, spend some time, trial and error. There are some things that actually just take time, like your website, and SEO and different things to just even appear on the internet. And so not being as worried about that, of having this clock ticking of I need some money. So that all led into then kind of phasing out of my engineering role and then going full time in this business. So
yeah, because I know it looked like you went full time last year. Mm-hmm. So 2024. So congratulations on full time on the business. But it does take a lot of time because you have to wear a lot of hats. And, I wasn't learning about SEO until I started my own business, and people don't understand it takes time to build that momentum and for Google to recognize you, because I wasn't trained in marketing. I wasn't trained in all these other things. So there's so much you have to learn on the side to just build the business. But what did you start off offering with Off the Beaten Financial?
Yeah, I mean, I started off as kind of, your standard financial advisor, financial planning services. And so, there's investment management was a big piece of it. But then I also offered more kind of financial planning, which is sort of a vague term that encompasses a lot of different areas. And basically it's hey, what are your goals? What do you want to do with your money? And then I can help with that, and so I spend a lot of time talking about cash flow, still do. And then, tax planning is a piece of that. And basically just kind of like reviewing people's financial situation and figuring out, okay, here's where you stand today. This is where you want to go. And how do we close that gap? And so building a roadmap or a blueprint, as I call it, between those places.
Yeah. And I know you focus on architects and engineers. So what makes our industry as professionals different than other industries? If it's just a standard banker, businessman, nurse, like, is there anything different?
Yeah, I mean, I get that question a lot, and like, there's not necessarily a ton that's different from like a technical standpoint. What's different though are the types of people and kind of their career path and their situation, what they're familiar with, and so the advice I got was like, hey, niche down, be more specific about who your target audience is. And that helps on the marketing kind of business development side. And because I was an engineer myself and I worked with architects a bunch and engineers, it seemed like a really easy thing to pick. And so a lot of it was like kind of from a business perspective. But also, and what I tell people is like, I understand your world. I understand the words you use, how you communicate. I understand your challenges, your struggles, your wins. And so, and as I kind of expanded more into like the business planning side of it too, like those were really natural conversations. And so I don't know if there's anyone else quite like me in the marketplace that offers kind of like the full suite of services that I do, that has the background that I have, that really understands the space. And so whether you're an architect or an engineer, it's like I can speak to that. And so I know how to help you, and I know what you're trying to do, and I know why you're trying to do it. And so all of that just leads me into being able to connect and relate better to my clients, be able to help them problem solve and help them accomplish their goals better.
Yeah. And you mentioned the business planning part as well. So are you also, beyond individuals, architects, engineers, are you also helping architectural and engineering firms with their business planning, growth, and strategy?
Yeah, so a lot of it is like small business owners. So, there's a ton of small firm engineers and architects out there. And so a lot of people I work with, have a small business like that, or are starting one or want to start one. And so kind of back to my roots of like, I wanted to be a business consultant. And so I was like, hey, I could just work with business owners, and then I kind of get to do that too. And then kind of within the architecture engineering niche as well. So what that looks like is, I help people kind of get a little more clear on like what they're trying to do. And so again, it's kind of back to the planning, having a business plan. A lot of people just kind of start doing stuff and they don't have a lot of clarity on how to make money with it or how to structure it or how to be the most effective. And then there's also a lot of people too that are kind of drawn to my story and they want to go off on their own and they're scared. And, I've been through that. And so I can help kind of outline a plan for that, as well as kind of talk about different ideas and how their business can look and be successful. And then kind of beyond that too, like I get into the weeds with, systems and processes. That was always kind of my strength. And I did a lot of that when I was building the department I was the only licensed person for a long time. And so I had all these young guys and I had to build systems around that so that we could actually get anything done. And so I can help, firms with that. And then beyond that too, I also offer kind of like CFO advisory services as well. And so again, for these smaller firms, like that doesn't make sense to have a full-time CFO, but they're busy doing lots of other stuff. I can look at the numbers. I can look at the finances. I can help them make better decisions by getting a better handle on that. So all of it kind of ties together. And at the end of the day, like I like to say, I'm just your money guy. Anything involving money, finances, investments, whatever it is, like I can help you with. And one skill that I learned as an engineer was that, we're expected to know so much stuff, and architects as well. And it's like, you can't possibly know all that. Like I just used to take the spec book and hand that to a young engineer and be like, okay, do you know all this stuff in here? It's like, of course not. Like, I don't even know what half the stuff is. but I'm expected to know it. And I have a license that says I do. And so the solution is like, you have to be good at finding information and knowing the resources you have. And so I treat finance and everything I'm doing now the same way, where I have relationships with different, subject matter experts, and I have different resources, and I'm part of different groups, and I know how to find answers. And so that's probably one of the biggest skills that I learned as an engineer, and then apply that on the financial side as well.
Yeah, because that's even where you come in general. Like I advocate for young professionals to get involved in like construction specifications institute, so then they can meet the product reps, because the product reps have that specific niche information and expertise and see the same things all the time. That then if I have those connections, I have somebody to call when I don't know what I need to do, but it's like, okay, I know enough that I can ask the right questions, but there's still a gap in learning that I need somebody else's input. Plus having a partial CFO on the side, you take the emotion out of it, because when you start your own business, it can be very emotionally attaching. If there's an issue with the finances, sometimes it's almost better to have that third party looking at it to give you an honest opinion, be like, this is what I'm seeing and this is what you got to do. And you're not, struggling to figure out what the next step is or get into a worse situation. So it's fantastic to have you kind of as a partner to a lot of small firms. So
yeah, a lot of what I do is all about just bringing awareness to these things, and so, lots of people come to me and they're like, hey, we're struggling to save. And then I get in there and it's like, it's because, you spend a lot of money, and like, they maybe already kind of know that, but they don't really know, and they don't really know where it's going. They're just kind of confused and sort of overwhelmed, and they don't really know how to fix it. And again, I'm a systems guy. Like, we can build a system. So like, people try to do stuff on willpower, and it's very difficult to do that. And so I don't talk about budgeting. I don't like that term. Try to stay away from that. But there's ways that we can help you structure your money and your finances in a way that makes it easier to save, to invest, to make decisions, to build wealth. And again, whether it's on the personal side or the business, it's very similar. And so that's kind of how I approach it, of let's build a system, let's put structure in place and do this in a way that gives you transparency and clarity to ultimately make better decisions, because that's what it's all about. And money to me is really just a tool. How do you want to use it? So you got to tell me kind of what your objectives are, and then I'll figure out how we can leverage the resources that you have to achieve those outcomes.
Yeah. Have you found there's common issues or gaps on either like AEC professionals in general or firms that you tend to see over and over?
I think that there's a lack of education around this stuff. And that was a big part of what I discovered on my own journey, and was like, okay, well, it's up to me. And I took the initiative to figure that out. And not everybody wants to do that, which is totally fine. And so that's kind of why I started this business, was to be able to take that expertise I developed and turn around and offer it to other people that don't want to spend the time to figure it out on their own. And so I think that the education piece is huge, because like, everyone hopefully has some money, and you're doing something with it. And so the question is, are you doing the right things? Are you doing the best things? Are you optimizing, And so there's a lot of opportunity or money left on the table. And so it's really about just kind of finding those things. And so lots of people have maybe a good income, or their business is maybe doing really well, but they don't really realize what they're missing out on or how much easier it could be. And so I think just for a lot of people, and there's lots of statistics about it, just money is a huge stressor. And even in my transition out of engineering to this business, like, I lost basically my entire income. And we had also just bought a pretty nice house and property not that long before that, And so I was like a little bit worried, but, we had a plan, and it was really clear about what we could and couldn't do, or how we needed to navigate that. And so that's what I try to provide to my clients. And that's what people are missing, is they don't have that clarity, because they don't have a good way to look at the information that makes sense to them. And that allows you to have more confidence in what you're doing and knowing if you're on the right path or how to be on the right path and what you need to do and where the line is between what you should and shouldn't be doing. Yeah.
From a small firm perspective, I know as I've talked to a number of small firm owners that, are 5-10 years in, and some of them, the advice they had from starting out was pricing themselves too low. Do you see that from like the CFO perspective? I mean, it's more the architects. So I don't know if the engineers are better at pricing themselves higher, because I'm sure you've seen the salary discrepancies between architects and engineers. But I found that fascinating that it wasn't just like a few individuals. It's like the people I've talked to, it's very consistent that it's, hey, I way undercharged. And so it took me a lot longer to get to where I was or get the proper work that I wanted, because you kept kind of lowballing yourself because we want to help so many people. I don't know if you've seen that just along your journey, or if you've advised on, hourly rates or how to structure fees to help them with, if you just do hourly for everything, you're just paying hour to hour. You're not gaining that gap of, hey, if I can do it faster than this, I've actually gained some more profit and more time back in my day. So yeah. I don't know if you've run into things like that.
No, definitely. I mean, it's a super common challenge in the industry. And so, yeah, I've talked to quite a few people about that. And, that's one of the services I help people with, is try to get a better handle on how they're pricing their services and what that should look like. And I agree with your comment on hourly. It's just, that was my issue with engineering too, is like, I didn't want to be stuck in this trading time for money. Like if I'm only ever worth an hour, and then there's kind of a natural limit on how much you can charge per hour, it's like you're always stuck in that situation. And so I wanted to get outside of that. And so that kind of, for me, looked like a different industry and a different business model. But in the AEC space, fixed fees, and, I was working with a engineering firm owner, or I am working with an engineering firm owner right now. And one of the things that we're working on is we're building a retainer kind of model. And so he works primarily with contractors. And so they come to him with all this kind of miscellaneous stuff. He's kind of like, they don't have an in-house engineer. And so he kind of provides that service. Well, it's like, what if they paid you a monthly retainer, basically, or kind of a subscription model? And so now he got really excited about it, because he's got this consistent reoccurring revenue. And we're figuring out how to position that and structure that and these things. And so I think that there are, ways around that, but it's very much a challenge in the industry. And underpricing, your services is, I think a lot of business owners do that in the beginning, regardless of industry, just because you're kind of second guess yourself, or you second guess your value. And especially people that are more, maybe artistic, or and in my space too, people want to help. And so there's like, you feel bad about, taking advantage of them or charging too much or whatever it is. But those are all just kind of mental excuses in a lot of way. And I think what's interesting is like, there's a ton of mindset when it comes to finance. And a lot of times the people that think that way, they don't have a lot of money. And the people that don't think that way, they have more money. And it's funny, like, the more success that you want, or that you think you're worthy of, you typically achieve. And so a lot of my work too is about getting people to kind of reframe how they're thinking about it and reposition it, where you're not necessarily taking advantage of them, or money is not bad. And it's all about how you use it and how you think about it. And so if we can change that, then that's way more valuable. And it's going to open the door to so much more potential.
Yeah, because you just have to get over stop thinking of it as a car salesman type of approach. It's, this is what it costs. When I go call a lawyer, that's how much it costs. And if we want to start having our industry be at that same level as doctors and lawyers, I don't go argue back with my lawyer on, hey, can we do a lower rate? Or my doctor before surgery, hey, can I get that at half price? Or do you really need to do, well, granted, you could argue on the insurance side for doctors, but
yeah, that's
here nor there.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there's some great books on like pricing relative to value, and I would highly recommend, people look into that. There's a great one called Pricing Creativity, and it's just really changes the way you think about it, and it makes a huge difference. And it's all about the value you provide. I think the best example that I heard was think about when you buy airplane tickets. Like, does anyone pay the same price? Like the person you're sitting next to, like, very slim chance that they pay the same price as you, but nobody questions it. And so it's all about like the urgency and the availability and when you bought it. And there's so many factors that go into the value of the ticket, even though it's just a plane ride from one place to another.
Yeah, exactly. I know my dad owned a small business, and the one time, like, he really didn't have time for this one project. Like, he owned an art gallery, so it wasn't engineering or architecture, but somebody needed him to do something, and he threw a crazy price at it. He's like, there's no way they're going to do it. And they took it. And he was like, well, holy crap. Okay. Like, I'll go do that. But sometimes even when you throw a big number thinking somebody's not going to budge on it, then it like almost has you question how you price other things. It's like, oh, could I really be charging that much? And people say yes.
Exactly.
So
yeah, I think my biggest tip on that is to like ease into it. I think there's no reason to get stuck at some price level. And so if you're not comfortable throwing out big numbers, then start where you are comfortable. But then once you've landed one or two or three projects or whatever it is, well, then just bump your fee up a little bit. And if you do that, every 3 clients, every 3 projects, you bump your fee up a little bit, and you just kind of make that a habit that you're always looking to kind of push that up. Like, eventually you'll get to those bigger numbers, and sure, you might have left some money on the table, but at least you're kind of moving in the right direction. And I think where people get stuck is when they just sit at a fee for 10 or 20 years. And it's like, did you factor in inflation? Like, there's so many other things going on.
Yeah. All the other large firms and other firms that have been around for decades have all risen their rates and had different fees or different percentages on their projects. So it's all different. But I know we also talked about kind of not working hour for hour. So as much as you're providing financial advice and services and helping firms, what was that side of your business that you're able to gain back? Do you have some passive income that you're able to do under this business entity that you tag along with the like hourly services or kind of the on-demand?
Yeah, so that was kind of my original draw to this business was a lot of advisors charge an asset management fee. And so basically it's a percentage of the assets that they manage. And then depending on the advisor, they offer a pretty wide range of services with that. Some people, it's very minimal, like I manage your investments and that's it, or maybe we talk about retirement and that's it. I'm much more comprehensive than that. And so, if I'm charging an asset management fee, like the services I provide are wide ranging. It's just charged through that. But I like that because markets traditionally sort of go up and there's kind of a built-in inflation hedge and your fee kind of naturally rises on its own. And especially if you do a good job. And so my investment approach too is a little bit more active than a lot of advisors. And so my whole goal is to help make my clients make more money. And so it aligns our incentives as well. If your wealth grows, like I make more. And so I like that concept. And so that's kind of the underlying, it's not really passive. There's still work involved, but it's a way to scale my time and my efforts. And so like once I've done the research and I have the portfolio that I recommend, like that's applicable to most of my clients. And so I can kind of do the work once and then replicate that, but it's valuable to each of them on their own. And so that was a big piece of, hey, I like this structure. I like that scalability of the business. And then beyond that, I also do, fixed fees for project related engagements and stuff like that. And so, I can kind of dictate what those cost, and I adjust those rates depending on the situation, and I can work to increase that, and as well as the more value I provide, the more it's worth in the situation, all of those things. So from that standpoint, I think I've had one hourly client in this business, and he didn't pay me. And so because I racked up a bill, and he was like, wow, that was more than I thought. And then he just never paid me. And so that's why hourly can be challenging, is people like to kind of know what they're getting into. And it's funny, like people will be willing to pay a higher dollar figure with the certainty of it than what it could have been otherwise. And they would rather do that. So.
Yeah. And there's always overlap with that in the AEC industry on not getting paid for things.
Yeah.
So like, I know I've had a number of professionals that will do like hourly and schematic, because they're like, well, we got to figure out, what are we putting together? What is the overall budget? What can we do? And then once they pass that, then it's like, okay, well, here's the amount now you can expect, now that we know what we're going with, which takes more time than just, a quick call. Hey, are we going over finances? Do you need help with the business? Like, it takes a little bit more time on the design side, but having that upfront knowledge so people aren't scared when they get the bill.
Yeah. And with that too, I mean, like when I was in the engineering world, and I worked for contractors. And I was doing a lot of like really high-end residential work. And so it was like all custom, and people were so worried about, well, it's just always different. And it's like, well, the circumstances are different, but on aggregate, it averages out. And so like, if you've done enough projects of that size or caliber, it's like, even in the schematic phase, like, sure, they're going to make you redo some stuff, but on average, you probably do 4 revisions or whatever it is. And so you can kind of come up with an approximation. And then sometimes you win, sometimes you lose a little bit, but you kind of, if you track that well enough, you can factor all that in, and it's going to be more valuable for you and for the client.
Yeah. Because you can, again, build those resources as much as you build that portfolio up front on kind of the baseline for everybody, and then work off of that based on everybody's individual circumstances. It's like having standard details and office specifications ready to go that, most of the work should be done for you. And then you just have to do the custom work. And that just depends on how much customization or how unique it is. So, but where do you see Off the Beaten Path Financial going, since I know you transitioned last year to full-time? So what's going on for 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, my goal for the next handful of years, is to probably stay as kind of a solo business and keep it small. I mean, I want to have kind of a boutique firm, that offers this really exceptional, holistic, kind of tailored service to AEC professionals. And, beyond that, like my goal for, I guess, most of my adult life now has just been to have the freedom and the flexibility and the optionality. And so that, I feel like, gives me the opportunity to have that, of just full control over my time, have a good income, be able to support, my family and things. And so that's kind of the goal for now. And beyond that, I might look to grow the business further and be in a position to potentially have something a little more sellable. But that's a little ways down the road. And so I think that my focus is really expanding into the firm owners space and being able to offer them kind of this full suite of services. And so that's kind of what I've been focused on, of, looking at tax prep and bookkeeping and the CFO component and, all these different areas, and just be able to provide kind of that holistic service. And so, that's kind of what I'm working on, and the direction I'm headed.
Yeah. And now that you're doing it full time, you get more time to work on it. So
exactly. Yeah.
It'll be fun to see how fast it goes for 2025 that you can focus on it. And I always like wrapping up my podcast with this final question. And it's, what advice do you have for young professionals just starting their careers?
Yeah, I think I would say that, time is your biggest ally. And there's a concept called a time billionaire. and I can't remember, probably should look this up exactly how much it is, but I think it's like 20 years, like 1 billion seconds, something like that. Maybe it's 30 years. And so you have a lot of time when you're young and things compound. And so whether we're talking about money or we're talking about skills or whatever it is, like it compounds. And so the sooner you can start that process, the better off you're going to be. And I mean, there's tons of things out there you can find about, if you save $1,000 when you're 20 versus if you save $1,000 when you're 40, by the time retirement comes around, it's a huge difference. And so a lot of times people, and especially, engineers and architects as well, struggle because they don't have a good enough understanding of what to do. And so that leads to indecision and then, analysis paralysis, or they're not quite sure. And so I think that in those situations, the best thing you can do is get some help, like having a little bit of insight, a little bit of outside perspective to make some good decisions early on are going to lead to huge gains down the road. And so it's hard to understand like how big of an impact that can have on the trajectory of your life or your finances or your career or whatever it might be. And so I think that at the end of the day, it's like put in the work to figure a couple things out early on, talk to who you need to talk to, pay who you need to pay, get it done. Because once it's set and you have a good plan and you're on a good path, it's so much easier to maintain that and watch it grow versus stressing about it or the uncertainty. And again, I'm all about options, and you want to have options. And so you do that by putting yourself in a strong position.
Yeah. Because even as you started the story at the beginning of the podcast on, you noticed early you didn't want to have that same path that you saw ahead of you. You realizing that early gave you time to make pivots and adjustments and planning, like getting the house before making a big pivot, but then ahead of kids, like you had that time available to then plan and figure things out. So, but other people tend to lag on questioning their careers and will pivot later on. So
yeah, and the money was a big piece of it too of, I was very good at saving and putting money away. And so again, I didn't necessarily know what for or exactly what I was going to do, but that gave me flexibility. And so when people are in a crunch where they're struggling to pay the bills or kind of get by, or they can't put money to the side, it's like you have limited options at that point in time because you're kind of dependent on your job, and then you get fearful, and then, it's just not the best situation to be in. And so I just never wanted to be forced into a situation for financial reasons. Like I wanted to be independent, to have the option to do what I actually wanted to do and not be forced into a situation. And so again, start early with that, do what you can to kind of put some money away, and then it opens the door to so many more possibilities.
Yeah, definitely. And if anybody wants to get a hold of you for any of the services or help on their end, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on social media. LinkedIn's kind of my main platform, but I'm also on Instagram and Facebook and a little bit on YouTube. And so Ryan Sullivan PE is kind of the same handle across the board. And then my website is Off the Beaten Path Financial, or it's obpfinancial.com. So you can find me there. I've got an email newsletter that goes out once a week. And so you can sign up for that if you'd like some insights and tips. It's a compilation of one story of financial planning in action, one actionable tip, and then I demystify one financial term. So,
yeah, no, I'm definitely going to sign up for it, and hopefully that helps me out in figuring out my mentorDINO story. So, but I will leave all those links down below in the show notes, so it's real easy for all of you guys to find Ryan, regardless on what help you need along the way. But I want to thank you, Ryan, so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. This was great.
I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Learn some advice to take with you and see how our industry is all tied together to create the world around us. Check out the description below for any links or resources we discussed. If you liked the episode, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up
and leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support finding that career path that best works for them. If you know someone that has inspired your own career that you'd like me to interview, let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me via my website or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share their story or your own. Thank you again, and I cannot wait for the next career story I get to share with you next week.